Good afternoon and welcome back to Module 2 of the Chapter 45 Rules. This module is going to cover Sections 9 through 11. Section 9 will be Case Management Services. Section 10 is the Individualized Plan of Care. And Section 11 is Rate Requirements. Section 9, Case Management Services. It is the case manager's responsibility to provide person-centered planning for each participant. The case manager must include enough detail to allow for providers to develop goals and objectives based on the information that is contained in the plan of care. The plan of care is considered a living document, which includes regular updates when changes occur. The division offers person-centered thinking training several times a year to assist case managers in understanding what these principles are. It is important to note that due to the case manager's role being so important to the participant and their team's success, should the division determine, after providing intensive technical assistance, that the case manager cannot provide appropriate case management services to all participants on their caseload, the division shall limit the amount of participants a case manager is able to serve. Continuing on with case management services, all eligibility paperwork is completed within 30 days, calendar days. This is what the case managers must ensure. They must also maintain current physical and mailing address of the participant, the legally authorized representative or representatives. The division and all providers on the plan must be updated as changes occur, and they must maintain a participant's file and service documentation that assures that information is disseminated to and received by the participant, appropriate parties involved in the participant's care, as authorized by a signed release of information. All eligibility paperwork includes initial application, medical eligibility, which is for the ABI waiver only, the ICAP, psychological, the LT-104, and financial eligibility. Continuing on with case management services, transitions and choices. The case manager shall provide the participant and any legally authorized representative with a list of providers to allow for choice of providers. This shall be done at least once every 6 months or more frequently as requested by the participant or the legally authorized representative. The Wyoming Developmental Disability Waiver System is based on a participant choice. In order to assist the participants with choice, it is important that the case manager regularly review provider options with them. If a participant chooses to change providers, the case manager should schedule and facilitate a transition meeting that allows for an exchange of information between all parties involved. Typically, this does include the new provider, previous provider, legally authorized representative, participant, and case manager. The case manager must also complete participant-specific training with any new providers that are on the plan prior to the provider working with the participant. If a case manager wants to resign their duties as a case manager for a participant, they are required to give at least 30 days notice in writing to the participant and the legally authorized representative. They do need to continue services for those 30 days or until a new case manager is approved, whichever one is first. Continuing on, we have case manager services, development, implementation, and monitoring of the plan of care. The plan of care should be utilized. It should utilize the participant's budget as needed and should be based on the participant's needs and choices. The IBA must last the entire plan year, and budgeting of units should also reflect this. Plans must be submitted 30 days in advance to the start of the plan. The only exceptions are those that are approved by the division for extenuating circumstances. This is now a recertification point and will be looked at annually. The division's expectation is that the case managers are to ensure that all providers receive a copy of the plan all team meeting notes, including the 6-month reviews, and that participant-specific training is completed as required. This should also be reflected in case notes and indicate who was trained as well as the date, the time, etc. For the plan of care team, the team should agree on the unit usage per month as well as how the budget will be used. The case manager is responsible for tracking the unit usage and will refer to the division when the units are being used too quickly during the agreed-on plan year. Providers should work with case managers to discuss when more units possibly need to be used. The units are expected to last the full plan year. Continuing on with case management services, this is regarding the monitoring of the plan of care. One of the essential functions of the case manager's job is to monitor the plan of care. There are many different ways to do this, including completing service observations, which is required for supported living and all habilitation services at least every 6 months, and for all other services at least one time annually for each provider that does the service. Service observations must be noted in the electronic case manager monthly form in the EMWS review. The case manager is also required to complete a review of the provider's billing and documentation from the previous month and summarize this in the monthly review forms. Providers are required to submit documentation to the case manager by the 10th business day of the month. Providers who do not submit this documentation should understand that the division requires case managers to complete a non-compliance form when they do not receive their provider documentation so that the division can follow up with that provider. Moving on to case management services, this is regarding second line monitoring. Case managers are required to be the second line monitor for the participants and their medical needs. This requirement is in place so that we can have another person ensure that a participant's medical needs are being met and they are receiving the care they require. Case managers can monitor this through the participant's MARS, which is their medical assistance records, medication assistance records, as well as the record of PRN medications that were accessed by the participant. Anytime the case manager identifies what they perceive to be an unmet medical need, it is important that the team discuss this and determine a way to assist the participant in getting what they need. Moving on to Section 10, this is regarding the individualized plan of care. The plan of care should be based on the comprehensive assessments and the person-centered planning process. It must meet and be scheduled at times and locations that are convenient for the participant. It cannot exceed 12 months and must be submitted to the division 30 days prior to the plan's start date. It should be reviewed at least semi-annually when a participant's needs change significantly or at the request of a team member, and it must be written in plain language that is understandable to the participant. Submitting the plan of care 30 days prior to the plan start date is new to this rule set. This will be reviewed during recertification of case managers to ensure compliance in this area. Moving on, still with the individualized plan of care, the plan of care must include the provision of or inability to provide services in a setting chosen by the participant from all available service options. It must include opportunities for the participant to seek employment and work in competitive integrated settings, opportunities for the participant to engage in community life and control personal resources. It must include cultural and religious considerations. It must include the services that are based on the choices that are made by the participant, must include what is important to the participant and important for the participant. It must include services based on the participant's strengths and preferences. And it also must include any rights or freedoms that are restricted and the plan to restore the right to the fullest extent possible. Continuing on with the individualized plan of care, must also include the provision of or inability to provide both clinical and support needs, the participant's desired outcomes, any risk factors and plans to minimize those, individualized backup plans, individuals important in supporting the participant, any learning objectives for habilitation services that address the training activities, training methods, and the measurement used to gauge the learning, schedules to document each direct care service provided, and the schedules must follow documentation standards, informed consent of the participant in writing, and signatures of all providers listed in the plan of care after the draft plan as written is completed by the team, including the participant's signature for informed consent. Goals and objectives must also match those that are in the plan of care, so be sure that you're looking at that. If you do have any questions about how to write a plan of care or any issues in writing the plan of care that your team has put together, make sure you contact your participant support specialist plan review staff, and they can help walk you through any issues that you might be having. Section 11 is the rate reimbursement requirements. So the division requirements, providers are paid through cost-based reimbursement system. Rates paid must be less than or equal to other community services. They must also consult with providers, case managers, participants, and their families. This is a requirement of the division. The division must also have a competitive bidding process for a contractor and receive approval from CMS before implementing any rates. Provider requirements, they must have cost data, claims data, participant needs assessment data, and audits of the data submitted. The purpose of this section is to outline not only how the division is required to conduct a rate rebasing study, but also what the provider responsibility in this study is. The provider requested information. This data is so extremely important and such an important component to setting a rate for DD services. The more information we have to analyze, the more we can get an accurate picture of what it costs to fund the system, and then we can set the proper rates. That is the end of Module 2, Section 11. Thank you for joining us for this module. Our next module will be Module 3, and we'll cover Sections 13 through 14 in Module 3. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.